Well, it seems like it's been forever since we've had Eagle football. At least it seems like it to me. But here we are again on the Where Eagles Dare podcast doing a game preview. Welcome, everyone, to the live stream with Lee and Tubby here on the Where Eagles Dare podcast. Whether you're watching us on Facebook Live, YouTube, or Twitch, you can catch us here each and every week doing the preview. And also, if fancasts and your content that way, well, you can also join us podcast, which is the Where Eagles Dare podcast. You can find us on Amazon Music, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Stitcher, which, believe it or not, seems to be our biggest right now, as far as our biggest listeners are coming from there. I'd say almost 40% from Stitcher, of all places. Now I use Stitcher, so I guess I can understand it, but it is what it is. So welcome again. Like I said, it seems like it's been forever and a day since we had Eagles. We had 2 games within 5 days. We had a Sunday game and a Thursday game.
Right.
And here we are almost a week from that, and we still have to wait until Monday to take on the Washington Commanders, the really embroiled in a lot of controversy, troubled Washington Commanders of Daniel Snyder, which the Attorney General of DC is apparently doing a civil suit now, saying that the NFL and Dan Snyder colluded to defraud the government, or to disguise all the toxic work practices that they did. It doesn't matter to me. All I want to do is beat this team and move on. This is the second time we've played them. I just want to be done with them. It's a division opponent. Those are never easy. I don't care what their record is. And honestly, we beat these guys 24-3. Not just a few weeks ago. Early in the season, roughly.
Right.
But they had Carson Wentz then. They were banged up. Carson Wentz goes down with an injury. They bring in Taylor Heinicke, who has been a pretty solid quarterback for them. Not a barn burner, but he's played better than Wentz. They've won 3 out of their last 4. Had a shot to beat Minnesota last weekend, which would have been huge for them, because the Eagles beat Minnesota. But Minnesota survived. So they're coming off of a loss, but they're hot right now, kind of. They got back to 4-4, and then they dropped 4-5 with the loss to Minnesota. So they're coming into the Linc on a Monday night, prime time. The Eagles are going to be ready. It's just that we got to accept that this is a different team that we beat 24-8. We may not have such an easy go of it this time. We sacked Carson Wentz 9 times the last time. I don't know if Taylor Heinicke is going to take that many sacks, especially since that's all they're going to hear about this week is the 9 sacks. What is your take going into this game?
Nah, man, they came off a 3-game winning streak before they lost to the Vikings last week, but they didn't really beat any teams that are playing well at this time. So they beat the Bears. Bears aren't playing necessarily that well. They win here and there, but they, lost to the Cowboys last week, which is not crazy. But then they beat the Packers, which is that's saying something, but the Packers just haven't been playing well. Not that they're not a good team. They just haven't been playing well. And the Colts, they beat the Colts by 1 point. Another team that don't even know who their quarterback is. They got a coach fresh off the streets with 0 experience. Beat them by 1 point, and then you lose to a Vikings team, which they were in it the whole game. Obviously 3 points, and only scored 20. So Taylor Heinicke is basically doing what he did last year. He mixes in a lot of good plays with a lot of bad plays. If you keep the pressure on him, like we did Wentz, I should see us really having the same outcome with the Vikings. I'm sorry, with the Commanders. We played Heinicke last year. We were like, man, he was playing really well. And then we went in there and we just kind of blew him out. Not blew him out, but he didn't really do anything. He is a streaky quarterback. I guess that's what makes him and PJ Walker, those XFL guys, because they're both streaky. PJ can go real streaky and then they could just fall off and you go, oh, I know why he was in the XFL. And then kind of the same thing with Heinicke. He can have some great games, and then he'll just start throwing interceptions all over the place, and you go, I see why he was in the XFL. So, but overall, they still have a good core in the backfield with Robinson and Gibson. I know JD's a little banged up, but and they got guys all over the place, man. That can ball, man. I do see the lawsuit. It is a lot going on. It's been a lot going on. I
Right.
mean, that's why their name is even the Commanders right now. Just they've just constantly been, and that wasn't nothing new with the name change. That name change has been about for probably 20 something years, as far as just people commenting like, man, why does it have to be named that? So that was a long time coming. But when you compile that name change with everything else that happened, man, it's like crazy out there with Washington. Ron Rivera is holding on by a string, man. They better be lucky they actually have an OG of a coach in Ron
Right.
Rivera, ex-player, understands the business, understands locker rooms, um, and he's going to have these guys ready regardless. So we still have to take them serious. It's still a divisional opponent. They're 4-5. It's crazy. It's crazy how they're only one game below 500. And I was kind of thinking last week, I wonder if it would have helped us a little bit if they beat the Vikings, because now it keeps the Eagles this one win away from now being tied in the NFC, with the Vikings obviously having the advantage with the win over them. But you get what I'm saying?
Oh yeah.
Just every, man, I was like, man, I don't want Washington to win. I don't want to hope that they win and then they go on a streak and then something crazy happens and then now they're just in the mix that I don't want them to be. So yeah, man, I'm looking forward to this game, man. But we should be able to handle them. They haven't changed that line. They may have changed quarterbacks, but they haven't changed that line.
Right.
So if they gave up to 9 with Carson, I should say we should be able to get at least 4, man. What you think our defense going to do this game?
Well, yeah, but before I think that the defense is going to get some sacks. I don't know if they'll get 9, like you said. Carson Wentz holds on to the ball way too long, so I think this is going to be one of those games that we've always seen with division opponents. You
Mm-hmm.
beat them, especially at their home field.
Right.
They play twice as hard in the rematch because you don't want to lose to your divisional opponent. You don't want to get swept.
Right.
So all week long, they're going to hear about getting the ball out quickly. So this is what Gannon should prepare for. And you mark my words when we watch this game and we're texting back and forth. Taylor Heinicke is not going to be going downfield like Wentz was trying to do, where Wentz was standing there in the pocket, looking like deer in the headlights, waiting for somebody to get open that wasn't getting open, looking at McLaurin and not being able to make a decision like he does. This is going to be some quick passes. They're going to come at us in the run game because they know that the Eagles' weakness is the run. At least the Pierces showed that. Some of the other teams had showed that they can run against us. So I think we're going to see a different game plan from the Commanders this week. I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Gibson and company. What's the kid who got Johnson that got shot in the leg?
Robinson.
Yeah. That
Robinson.
got shot in the leg. So you're going to see him. And like you said, McKissick's banged up, but I think you're going to see a heavy dose of Gibson and then followed up with quick passes in the flats. They're going to try it. So the Eagles really are going to have to play up on their receivers because you look at what the Texans did. The Texans only threw downfield a couple times because they just didn't have the quarterback to do it. They had the one to Dorsett, but otherwise these guys were doing exactly that was the blueprint. Throw short and run the ball. And it worked for a half. And I think we're going to see Washington come out very hot in the first half with that kind of game plan. It all depends on if Gannon comes after Heinicke and overly aggressively pursues or plays this short game. We'll see how it goes. One thing I want to say, it's pretty fitting that we are in DC playing this week when it was election week, if you will, the midterm elections, which everybody's buzzing about. I don't really care about all that. I'll be honest. I'll say that I voted, but I don't really care because that's my philosophy is that I've lived on this earth long enough to see both Republicans and Democrats rule and nothing different. I mean, they have different platforms of what they say. What they say, but what they do is totally different. But that's all I'm going to say. This is not a political show. That's all I'm going to say about that. What I will say is I got my sticker for voting. So I just wanted to show that everybody gets to show their sticker when they come out of the election booth. I got mine,
Dang,
just like everyone else.
they
You
weren't
could
giving out those at the ones I went to, man. Man, dang, that must be. I must have went to wrong precinct. I need to get more East Coast so I can get out here. They gave me one that said "Boo Nebraska." I said, wait a minute, it's not right. They don't like Nebraska because we're so close to them. So that
Oh, okay.
Colorado Nebraska beef is always there. So anytime guys are rolling around with big red stuff, people give them a lot of flack for it. Like Colorado's actually good this year. So anyway,
Right, right.
so leave us alone. But anyway, anytime they play, it's a big game, man.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, man, that's dope, man. Cowboys do suck. I wish they had these stickers in real life. I would definitely wear one.
Oh, definitely. Yeah. I just love the Photoshop deal because this is pretty awesome. But you're right. Michigan and Nebraska is going to be a lot of fun.
Oh,
Michigan's
man,
got 3 more games to go.
for you, this is
Yes.
a
Yeah.
walkover season for Nebraska. It makes no sense. You know, while we're on, it makes no sense why Nebraska just don't have the talent. I
Right.
mean, they have the name recognition. How come you can't get kids to come to that school
I,
that can ball out? I mean, even with Scott Frost leaving, he did better recruitment down in Central Florida than
yeah.
he did. It's like he got comfortable at Nebraska and they just kept paying him. He just kept losing. They
Yeah.
kept paying him.
Yeah.
He lost. He was like 2-8 contract extension. Like, what?
Yeah.
You know,
You're right.
but man, I'm really disappointed, but we'll be back. Big Red's been down for a while, man. They really haven't had that season since like Taylor Martinez was
Yeah.
balling for them. But they
And
just
then
haven't been able to
and then
find a quarterback.
he moves on and has a semi-successful season. What, Kansas State, right? He went down to Kansas.
That's his younger brother.
Oh, okay.
That's the
The
other
other
Martinez.
Martinez. Okay.
That's
Yeah.
I think that's his brother or cousin or something like that. Taylor, he was about like 8 years ago or something,
Okay.
something like that. I
Okay.
think he was right
I knew they had the
before.
Martinez that was
Oh yeah,
quarterback.
and then they got another one, and then yep,
All
he
right.
played well, and then he went. I think he's at like Kansas or Kansas State. Yeah, you're right about
Gotcha.
that. But that's the
Gotcha.
other Martinez, if I'm not
That's
mistaken.
that's how much I keep up with Nebraska,
Yeah, yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, man.
But it's
Hey, I
all
don't
good.
blame you, man. I don't blame
Staying on the political theme, again, Cowboys suck the sticker. Just some interesting Eagle news in the midterm elections. Just Corey Simon,
you.
one
Get
of
out.
my favorite defensive tackles of all time. Yeah, he won a state senator of the great state of Florida. So
Oh, that's
down there,
cool.
Corey Simon is your new state senator elect. So he'll be doing your state duties there. He's not on a federal
Wow.
level, but
Yeah.
that's a big deal. It reminds me when John Runyon ran for office and everything, and was elected. So, and I think
Wasn't
he
he
was
in
in the House.
Jersey when he got a
Yeah, yeah, I think he was in
he
the
was in
House in
Jersey. I
Jersey.
know he's from
Mhm.
Michigan, but I think
Yeah,
I know like his roots are in
he,
Michigan, but I
he
think he
played at Michigan.
ran
Yeah,
in Jersey or something like that. That's crazy, man. Corey Simon. Look, hey, that's good to see folks, moving on after football and still like affecting their community. That's pretty dope. I think he didn't he go to one of those schools down there? Like Florida
I think it was
State,
Florida or Miami
Miami,
is where
one
he
of
was
those
from.
schools. I think we drafted him up out of one of those Florida
Yeah,
schools.
he actually, yeah, did he play Florida State? He played Florida State.
Florida State.
Florida State. So
I
yeah,
knew just in Florida. I knew he was
yes,
in Florida when we picked him up, so I know that
he was
he had some
so
ties.
solid.
Oh man, Corey Simon coming out was
Yep,
highly touted pick
yep,
out of Florida State, man. Like a lot of players were back then. If you
yep.
know, that was the Alabama at the time. You got a guy from Florida State, USC. Whoa. You had, or I mean, don't even talk about the Miami games. This is Eagles pie. We talk about the Miami days with like Sapp and Michael Irvin, Ed
Oh
Reed,
yeah.
Ray Lewis. I mean, The Rock.
Well,
he
that's
didn't
what I
go
was
on
just
to be
about to say.
he didn't go on to
If
be a great
no,
football player, but he came still a great athlete. Still took that swag from those U days.
well, yeah, the mid '90s up through the early 2000s, that was the team, was the U. But have you watched the show Young Rock where he recaps his days at
Nah,
University of Miami?
nah, mm-mm,
I highly recommend it. It's a funny show. It's Rock. He narrates his own life.
mm-hmm.
And so it goes back to when he was a kid, when he was a teenager, and when he was in college. So they
Got
have
you,
these 3 different stories that go on. Every episode's like a different age group.
got you. Okay.
And so they do a lot. They tell a lot of stories of when he knew Warren Sapp and all those guys at Miami, and it's really funny. So the ones with Miami, I actually love a lot. But anyway, we're getting off
R.I.P.
track.
Jerome Brown. Sorry, R.I.P. Jerome Brown. Then Jerome
Yep.
Brown.
Yep,
was from
Jerome
the
Brown.
Miami days.
Yep.
RIP. Because I remember watching documentary. He has like this military hat on, and they was just, man, Miami was something, man, in the early 90s. You had Luke,
It
had the
was.
music, everything just
Jimmy
down there.
Johnson. Jimmy
Oh,
Johnson,
Jimmy
head coach at
Johnson.
the time. Yeah,
Jimmy
yep.
Johnson.
Yeah.
Golly.
It
That's
was an
why he brought all that
unbelievable team.
swag to the Cowboys. That it makes sense now. It does. It actually makes sense. I knew he coached Miami, but I
Right.
never really tied just Miami were like an NFL team in itself at the time. Like if you played for the Hurricanes, you might as well just tell everybody you played for Detroit Lions or the Eagles, the same thing. If you played for the U, that was a big deal, even while you were in
Yeah.
college. If you, even if you were an alum, it still had meant a lot. Florida, all those schools down there, man. And then now it's not, man. Now Florida doesn't seem to be the place to go play football. Alabama and Louisiana, and now
Well,
maybe USC may be resurging. We'll see.
yeah.
We'll
Yeah.
see. We'll see.
The thing that you mentioned though, it is odd because those Cowboy teams in the early 90s had a lot of that Miami swag,
What?
and they've not had any of that since. You had Dion and Irvin, Emmett, those guys. Emmett played at Florida.
Oh
So you
yeah,
had a lot of that swag that they had, and it actually did propel them to championships, and they've been
yeah.
absolutely garbage now. That's the
Crazy.
truth. It still suck.
Yeah.
They good thing for us is that those days are over and hopefully never to return. This team's pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. I'm gonna give them credit. But the Eagles won. They got scoreboard right now. All the Cowboys fans say, "Wait till we have Dak." Yeah, Dak Prescott doesn't scare me. I'm just gonna let you know this, Cowboy fans. Dak Prescott does not scare a single Eagles fan out there. If you had Tom Brady, even at his age, with that defense, maybe you would make me just a tinge a little bit. There's not a single quarterback in the league other than there's one that I don't want to see it go up against the Eagles defense, and I'll be 100% honest. Patrick Mahomes, I don't want to see go up against the Eagles defense. I think the Eagles defense is great. If they create a pocket around him like they've done other quarterbacks, Mahomes just finds a way to get the ball downfield. He finds ways to win. You have to play on your game like the way Tennessee played this past weekend in
Yep.
order to beat him. But he's like fighting a southpaw in boxing. He's unpredictable, and
Mm-hmm.
you don't want unpredictable in the NFL. Josh Allen, yeah, great passing, but you take Diggs out of the equation, like we talked about, last night. It makes a totally different scenario. And if you look at Allen's numbers compared to Jalen Hurts right now at this point of the season, almost identical.
Oh, are
Unbelievable. In
they?
fact, he has more interceptions than Jalen, of course. Jalen's only thrown 3 on the year. I think Allen's up to 8 already.
Mm.
But other than that, QBR, everything is right down the line. Very, very close. But
And
anyway,
Jalen is playing.
he
Jalen is
is.
playing solid football. He is absolutely
He
playing
is.
solid football.
He is. So here is the last 5 games that we had on the schedule that we talked about. Like I said, you pointed it out. They beat the Bears, they beat the Packers 23-21, and the Packers are struggling. The Bears, when they played them 4 weeks ago, they weren't what they were doing right now. It seemed like this last week against Miami, and maybe it was just the opponent. Maybe Miami just a good matchup for the Bears.
Right.
Maybe it was, but Fields went off, and he's starting to see a little bit of confidence. So I wonder kind of what Bears team we're going to get this week, because who the Bears got this week?
Who do
Hold
they?
on, I'll tell you. Give me 1 second. They have the Lions.
They do
So
have the Lions.
yeah, they have the Lions. I have like a little board with all the helmets on it behind me, so that I can look at whenever I want and see
Gotcha.
who's playing who.
Gotcha.
But yeah, they're playing the Lions this week, so we'll see what kind of Bears team they got. But you're right, they lost to the Titans when the Titans actually had Tannehill and running the ball, but they only lost by 4. But
Mm-hmm.
again, Wentz goes down, Heinicke comes in, the whole culture changes, and then they have a 3-point loss to the Vikings. So it is a team to be wary of going in. And I think this Eagle team doesn't take any team lightly. If you
Right.
watch the way they talk and you see them the way they come across, they're business-like in their approach to teams. They're not looking ahead. They're not taking anything for granted. And so I think going in this, they've got their head on right. You look at the Eagles' last 5 games, beat the Jags in that downpour 29-21, had the game in control. Same thing with the Cardinals on the road, had the game in control, let Arizona back in late, ended up getting the missed field goal win. The Cowboys, again, 3 picks in the first half, ton of points. held off the Cowboys, who had a couple touchdowns to get back in it, but
Mhm.
then the Eagles put it away with that long drive. Steelers never in doubt, dominated them, and then the Texans a little bit of a hiccup in the first half. So the Eagles haven't had the easiest of roads down here. I mean, you've got a couple of weaker opponents, but it's not been easy. The
Right.
Jacksonville game was a deluge.
Mhm.
Arizona on the road against Kyler Murray. The Cowboys game, it's we've watched these games. It's not been an easy road. But the one thing that's been a constant for me is they've never looked defeated on the field.
Right.
And even when they've gone down in games, because they've had, like, even the Texans going down the field scoring, they just don't seem out of it. The
Mhm.
Steelers, keeping it close in the first quarter, and they wear you down. And I think that one of the things that we showed that video yesterday of Jason Kelsey where he said that about the 18 play drive, and
Mhm.
he said everybody's celebrating, but I went and got some oxygen because I knew another one was coming. And
Quick.
that's the mentality that they're in right now with this team, is that they're prepared to have these long drives.
And that's a shout
So,
out to the defense as well, saying we're going to get the ball back. Because I think he mentioned quick or something. He mentioned something else. I know we're going to
yeah,
be right back out. It's going to happen again. I mean, we're going to get the ball right back. And yeah, man, Kelsey. Kelsey also said in that interview, that post game interview after the last week's game, that he's never really seen Jalen rattled. Really, he's like, I don't know if you saw that interview. He was just like, man, I've never, he's probably one of the most poised players I've ever played with. And I was like, man, it could be a little hyperbole in the moment, but I was like, that's still high praise from a Hall of Fame center saying, man, this is one of the most poised guys I've ever played with. I thought that said a lot. The one thing that stood out about the Commanders last week, they didn't really. That first half was 7-3 at the half, right? So it's kind of like a nothing fest, right?
right.
One thing that was concerning that Minnesota couldn't really get the run game going. I was a little surprised by that, but Jefferson had a day, 7 catches, 115, touchdown, long for 47. I mean, Curtis Samuels had a big touchdown in that game too, a 49er from Heinicke to Samuel. So I think Washington, the reason why they were able to climb back into this game is because they have somewhat of a balanced squad. Like, obviously they were stopping the run. So when you can stop the run, that means teams can't run the clock on you because you're stopping the run. Oh, there you go. Right into these yeah,
Yeah, they're 11th. They're 11th in rush defense,
oh yeah,
averaging 113 a game. And that's near top 10. You're
Mhm.
exactly right. The thing that scares me about their defense, I mean, overall they're 14th in the league. This is not a horrible defense.
Right.
They're 19th in passing, and I'll tell you why they are, in my opinion, is they run a lot of man to a fault. I like a balanced approach of mix of zone and man. When we played them the last time, they come at you heavy, and they leave their corners and their DBs out in single coverage a lot. They will run a single high safety to put pressure on the QB and leave their guys in single man. And that's why Devontae had such a big game against them last time. Remember, he had the huge jump ball,
Oh,
one-on-one plays where it was really him and the defender, and he was able to come down with the ball. So if they do that against the Eagles this time, because I honestly think, so I said a few minutes ago that this isn't the same Washington team we played a few weeks ago. But this isn't the same Eagles team they played either. I
right.
think that this team has gotten better since the first Washington game. I think that they've gotten more chemistry with their receivers. Jalen Hurts has. And so if they play man and try to pressure Jalen to force some sacks, they may get a couple. They're probably going to get a couple, but
Yeah.
they're also going to be leaving Goddard, Smith, and AJ wide open, and they're going to make them pay. I think you're going to see a couple more big plays by either AJ or Devontae or both.
Mhm.
The run game, yeah, we may not see a lot in the run game if we can't get Sanders going. You know how the Eagles are this
Mhm.
season.
Yeah.
Everybody going into the season thought they were going to be a primary run team like they were last year when we got back into it. It's not the case this year. If Sanders isn't running, the Sirianni, they go to a lot of other plays. They go to RPOs, and
Mhm.
they go to flat passes. They go to those little, sideline passes to try to get the ball going. And so I think that you're going to see that if Sanders struggles against this rush, they're not going to stick with it. The Eagles just don't.
Yeah.
Something does, and that's one of the things I like about this team is that they don't stick with a sinking ship. if a play doesn't work, you rarely see it again in the ball game. Like last year, they'd run that same play over and over at the goal line where they're trying to do that little reverse run or the
Yeah.
option pitch. I am so glad they buried that option pitch. Now watch them run it this weekend.
you,
Uh,
you know,
but that
oh,
little, you know
another-
what I'm talking about, the one where
oh,
Wentz
yeah.
grabs it and he's
Oh,
running side by side with the running back. It's
yeah.
horrible,
I'm so
horrible.
glad. That's a good point. I forgot they even took that out. It looked like a triple option or
It
something.
was
It
the
was
worst.
just so. That last year offense went on a roller coaster. They had to find themselves because what they did at the start of the season, remember, they wouldn't even run the ball at the start
Right.
of the season. Then they ended up being the best team in football running it. And it's just like, what? How do you don't even run for like the first 7, 8 games?
Exactly.
Granted, Sanders had one touchdown, not even granted, but as a result, Sanders only had one touchdown. That shows you versus this year, you see the success that he's having. Another thing about Washington, you got TJ Hawkinson walked right on that field and caught 9 passes on him for 70.
Mm.
I'm biased, call me biased, but I think Dallas Goedert can produce that same thing against against Washington. I'm on some. If TJ can do it, and TJ's a hell of a tight end, one of the best tight ends in the league. He's a good tight end, good blocker. He's just like Goddard to me. I just think Goddard's a little better. I don't know.
Yep.
But yeah. So there's the tight end part there as well. So we have AJ, we have Devontae, Pascal, Watkins, whoever you want to mix in, but we still have what a lot of teams don't, and it's that tight end, man. We have a solid tight end. We have that, we're not just running them 2 yards out. He's catching 15-yard passes. He's part of our screens. He's part of a lot of big plays.
He is. He's getting a lot of recognition this year more than any other as being one of the top tight ends in the league.
Mhm.
Fantasy production is if you've got him in fantasy, he's one of the few sure things
Yeah,
outside of Kelsey in Kansas City.
yeah.
So you're loving it. If you drafted him this year, I wanted to, it just didn't happen. But that you're right. The Eagles have weapons. They've got their 3 primary weapons, and then you throw in Pascal occasionally. My big thing is, like I said, we need to see more progression from this team as far as being able to dominate. I don't care if they win it by 3 touchdowns, just look dominant on both sides of the ball. Prove that you are 8-0 for a reason. I do think it is a very different team from week 2. The Commanders had come off of a big win in Green Bay at week 1. Everybody was raving on Wentz because he threw for 4 touchdowns, and everybody was like, "Oh, he's amazing," or whatever he threw for. But the Eagles came in there and shut him down and made him look bad, and then they went on a bit of a losing streak. And so I'm sure they're going to come at us, but the Eagles on paper are far better. I mean, you look at their current numbers right now with Heinicke. He's at 600 yards with 5 touchdowns and 3 interceptions and 87 rating. Gibson is sitting at 328 and Robinson at 219. These numbers aren't great. The one you've got to worry about, McLaurin, he's got 600 yards receiving already,
Oh
which
yeah,
is outstanding.
he's their number
And
one guy.
Samuel is good. Yeah.
Samuel was like
But outside of that,
Wentz's guy, and McLaurin is Heineke's guy. Even look at the touches last week. I mean, McLaurin had 5 catches. He had 9 targets. He led in targets by almost double. Samuel's had 3 catches, but that one came on that 149-yard play. Most of them was dinking and dunking, man. I
you're right.
will give Carson a little bit of, now that I'm looking at their schedule, I'm like, man, he went on a run where he played some solid teams. He started his first loss out, not they beat Jacksonville, but then they lost to Detroit.
That's right. It was
In a
Jacksonville. I
bit of a
said Green Bay.
shootout. Then they
I'm sorry.
come lose to us, but then they have to go play Dallas and then Tennessee. So
Right.
they were on a 4-gamer where it was some tough squads, and then you go right into Chicago, then Green Bay.
Right.
They've had somewhat of a tough schedule, man. So they may be a little more battle tested. But I can't say that because the Eagles were down. We don't talk about enough that the Eagles were down 14-0 to Jaguars. And we
Right.
came back in that game like it was nothing. So you can look at the total score of the Jaguars game. But what if I told you the Eagles were down 14-0 before we even got going? Because they scored and then the pick 6, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh shit. And we never flinched in bad weather, still continued to make plays. So we've seen our team in holes this year. We've seen, I guess that's adversity. I mean, down 2 touchdowns in the NFL on a shitty night, where it was raining and real windy. Some teams struggle to come back from that. But
Right.
because you're trying to get a 14-yard play in one play, and that don't happen. I'm sorry, a 14-point play on one play, and that just doesn't really work out like that. So I
Yeah.
just think we're up against it again, man. Divisional opponent. They are playing well. They didn't play great against Minnesota, but they gave Minnesota a scare towards the end and almost should have won that game. Actually, no. For a minute, they were up.
Yeah. They
Actually,
were up. They were up
they
till
were
late.
up. Yeah,
Minnesota had to come
came
from
back.
behind.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was just that first half they were down.
Yep.
So I think overall, man, we just have this is another team that if we do what we just play our style of football, we can dictate the pace in this game. Like you say, Patrick Mahomes isn't coming to town where you have to kind of adjust and see who's dictating the pace and see where you can see your game management and stuff. I think, man, as long as we respect this team, which we will, Brian Robinson, Gibson, we're going to have a day in front of us, man. And probably Thomas is coming back. They love Thomas, Logan Thomas. So I think this is going to be another dog fight for us, man. Just whether it starts slow and ends good or whatever, it's going to be a little weird there, man. It's going to be a little weird, man. Division opponent, again, they're feeling confident. You're 4-5. And I think you mentioned only 3 teams were over 500 in the NFCs. I'm sorry,
Right.
NFC, period.
NFC. Yeah, period.
So if you're Washington, man, you really want to win this game, put you back at 500, put you in a place where a lot of the other teams in NFC aren't. So they have a lot to play for. You've already said it. They definitely don't want to get swept. To a divisional opponent, it's kind of like one of those things like, oh man, we got swept, So they have a lot to play for, and to quiet down all that chatter going around their team too. So watch out, man. I think Washington is coming up the ranks, man, and you can see 4 NFC East teams in the playoffs, man. While I'm on that for a second, the Vikings play Buffalo this week.
Yeah.
So if Josh Allen plays, something's going to have to give. That 7-1 record or that 6-2. This means we have to win to keep putting us in that better position, man, the best position we can get in. So hopefully the Eagles see that the Vikings are 7-1, see they're still playing well, and use them, if not even the Cowboys, as like I don't want to say a benchmark because we're above them, but just something to pay attention to. Competition is right there because we slip up one game, same record as the Vikings, and now here we go. So. Yeah.
You're right. The Vikings have a really tough matchup with the Buffalo. It's in Buffalo, so a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
They also have to play, like you said, they have to play the Cowboys and the Giants this year. So the road is not easy for the Vikings the rest of the way. Yep, they're 7-1. We're 8-0. They escaped with a win over the Commanders. I had my notes down wrong, and so I was actually looking at the Viking or the other opponents, the Vikings opponents, because it just was on my screen wrong.
Yeah.
So you're right. Jacksonville was the game that they went through 4 touchdowns on. Eagles had them week 3 and won 24-8 pretty convincingly. They had the safety, and then Wentz got a touchdown late. It wasn't even that close. So this one, I think, like you're right. I think it'll be closer, but I think the Eagles should be comfortable for most of the way. Now they are 11-point favorites.
Wow.
They're down a little bit from the Texans. That's a lot of at home is a big reason they're at home. It's prime time. They play well on prime time. So it's a tough one for me because I think anything over 10 and a division opponent that even that's down is tough. So
11 points is a lot, man.
Yeah, it's a ton. So real quick, let's look at the injuries. This is the last thing we've got on this game. They've got a backup lineman, Beavers. I love that name. Their undisclosed injury, questionable. A corner, Castro Fields, expected to return week 11. Dotson is a questionable with a hamstring injury. That's probably their only real. And Drayden, he's a decent defensive back, questionable as well, undisclosed issue. I would say the questionable ones you'll probably see try to suit up. I would say that. And our injuries. We lost Jordan Davis. That's one thing that we will not have in this game to help stop Gibson. Hopefully they fix that middle of the defense. Hargrave is great rushing the passer, but we have not been able to really stop running backs from getting to the second level. And I think that I honestly believe, like you said, that they're going to come for us, and I think they're going to try to do it on the ground like the Texans did. I think everybody from here on out, the one thing that the media did get right is that when you saw what Pierce did on the ground, even though it was a blowout loss. Everybody is now looking at the Eagles and going, yeah,
Mhm.
and I tell you why they do it. It's the Eagle scheme. And again, I'm not faulting Gannon because it works in other aspects.
Mhm.
But the problem is that you're set up with 6 men in the box because of how much pressure you come from the end and how much coverage you do on the outside. So they run usually two linebackers and a nickel corner who's usually lined up on the outside, or he's not so much in the box, but he can make a play. The
Mhm.
problem is you play a nickel corner 65% of the time, they're not stopping the run. Your linebackers could probably do that.
Mhm.
You're taking Hassan Reddick and
Yeah.
putting him on the end. And so you've got two other linebackers in Edwards and White, not necessarily run stoppers there. So you've got to count on the middle of your defensive line to do it. And we're not getting it from Fletch and Hargrave right now. So if when in the Texans game, when Gannon mixed it up, when Pierce was killing us in that late in the third quarter, early fourth, and he went to 8 men in the box, that
Mhm.
stuff stopped. And then the Texans didn't know what to do at that point. So you have to start to recognize what are teams doing, start to disguise that maybe you've got 6 men in the box, and then before pre-snap, shift them inside to stop that run. Whatever we got to do it. So because teams right now, we're a target
Oh yeah.
for our run defense, and it's gonna go that way every single game.
Oh yeah, absolutely, 100%. Because we're the benchmark of the league right now. You know, people are trying to beat us. Like I said, once the Jets beat Buffalo, it took a little to cool out their walk, but the Eagles with that 0, that 8-0, that 0 is a bullseye.
Hmm.
Because everybody's shooting for it. Everybody wants to put up a point on you. So yeah, man, we're up against it every week, no matter who we're playing. This is a lot of all professional athletes, the top guys. They can all somebody's going to be able to put together a game. Like, come on, man, we haven't played perfect football. We just played better football than everybody else we've played. And that is facts. That is facts. I don't think we've escaped. If you want to say the Cardinals, but they weren't whooping us. They would have just tied it up. It's not we wouldn't have lost the game. They would have just tied it. But nobody. That's why I said nobody has played significantly better than us. We just, they've exploited some sparks. Like I said, the triple tight end package, and along with that heavy run, right now is the key to even stay in the game with the Eagles. Because you give us that ball back, we're scoring a lot, man. I'm telling you, Eagles had a chance to
Exactly.
score every single drive of that Houston game, the
Yeah.
first half. It's underrated. It's underrated. Every drive you
Yeah.
have a chance to score. Just some stuff here and there. Oh man. So
I,
I think they're playing
I,
solid. When you bring that same energy, they'll be fine. Go ahead, my bad.
I agree, and I hope they do win on Monday. I think they will. I think I think everybody kind of does it. They'll win. They may not cover that 11, but I think most people think that the Eagles will walk away with a home win on Monday night, and then they turn right around. And I hope so that they go 9-0 because they turn right around and go to Indy the following week, and I'm going to be at that game with my
That
son.
is right. That is right.
So I'm hoping that I get to see them go 10-0, which would be crazy.
It would be
Um,
insane, man.
you got to know that if they get by Washington, their odds of going 10-0 with Erlinger at quarterback and a new coach in Jeff Saturday, and they got to face Taylor, but the odds are in their favor that they go into Indy and win. Not guaranteed. Nothing's guaranteed in this
Right.
league. But yeah, I'm hoping that that's the case. That they come away Monday with a win and we go to 9-0 and we move on in the season.
Yes, sir.
And that's all she wrote for this Eagles preview of the Washington Commanders coming to Philly on Monday Night Football. Dun, 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 dun. I need to get that in the sound bank so that I
Oh
can play
yeah.
that on Monday night.
Yeah.
I should have. It's my fault. I blame myself.
Get
This
that
first Monday
waiting
night
all
game.
day on Sunday night. You gonna get that one too.
No, you know how I feel about that theme song.
Yeah.
I'm like, I've never understood that theme song. I've been watching football all day. I've not been waiting for Sunday night because I've had football. It would make sense if there was no football at all during Sunday and the only game was Sunday night.
Right.
So I've never understood the Sunday night
Right.
football theme. I'm just saying, every time they sing it, I go, makes no sense.
Yeah.
I've been watching, especially if your team played at one of the earlier games. You've
Mhm.
not been waiting all day for Sunday night. you're tired,
Right.
and now I'm going to bed to watch football on Sunday night. That would probably be
Right.
better. I don't know. Because I'm usually
Absolutely.
laying in bed watching the game on Sunday night. I'm not waiting all day. But anyway, I digress. Thank you for joining us on the Where Eagles Dare podcast with Lee and Tubby. We're here each and every week to do Eagles recap. We also here to do a Eagles preview, and we also do a fantasy football show each and every week. If you like any of those things, make sure that you like and subscribe us on YouTube. You follow us on our social media platform on Facebook. You can find us Where Eagles Dare podcast. It's that simple. Same thing on Twitch. Also, we're on all major podcast providers: Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon, so many more, including Stitcher, which is where most of our followers come from. And if you want to email us with any of your questions about fantasy or the Eagles or anything at all, tell us we suck. I don't care. Tell us the Cowboys suck. That'd be fun. You can email us at lee.bird, that's byrd.eaglesdare at gmail.com. Until then, we have to wait now all weekend long. It's Veterans Day weekend. I do want to say happy Veterans Day. Tubby and I are both veterans. Tubby's wife is a veteran. My wife was a veteran. My daughter was a veteran. My son is a veteran. That's the family we come from. So happy Veterans Day to all my favorite vets out there, including this guy that sits across from me each and every week. So I want to say that. Enjoy the long weekend, and we'll have to wait just a few more days until Eagles football. We'll be back here next week to recap the Commanders game. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tubby for his final words of the night.
Hopefully we keep the gas down, man. And the Commanders, man, don't take them lightly. Keep the foot down on the pedal, man. Just keep going and just keep building, man. Monday night in Philly is going to be rocking. Happy Veterans Day, to my buddy here, Lee, as well, too, and all the veterans out there. RIP to William Irby. Yeah, man, with that said, man, fly, Eagles, fly.
And go Birds. Have a great weekend, everyone. We'll see you next week.